We have about an hour together or so, and the way in which that I like to do this is I'm going to get through my material just steadily. If you have questions that come up, I'm going to ask you to write them down. Just write them down because I want to make sure that I get them at the end. But I want to just say that there will be some time in the presentation to discuss. So you'll be able to talk together about some things. But first of all, I want to just say a little bit about me, just a little bit. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've worked in a lot of settings over my 20 years in this field. I've worked as a school psychologist for a number of years, working with kids with deafness, blindness, and multiple disabilities. So easy kids to work with. I've also worked in hospital settings, inpatient, outpatient. I've worked in private practice for most of my career. So now I've been with Heritage Professional Associates for the past 13 years, and I'm the director of the Wheaton office. So I'm one of the owners of Heritage now, and I'm the director of the Wheaton office. But I have an office in Hinsdale as well. So in Hinsdale, we've been there since 1990. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Heritage Professional Associates. Anybody kind of heard about? It's a large multidisciplinary group practice. We have about 50 clinicians, 4 locations. We have specialties pretty much across the board. We have psychiatry as well. So it's a large group practice. So about me personally, I am married. I've been married for 20 years, and I have 3 kids of my own, a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So that's kind of where I am in my parenting journey. I've been working with teens my whole career. I used to be the young, cool therapist, but now I'm getting old. So I'm not so young and cool, but I try to stay relevant with my teens that I work with. So how many of you have teenagers at home? So really a good percentage. How many middle school kids? Middle schoolers, and how about elementary school kids? Okay, you guys who are the parents of elementary school kids will probably benefit the most because you can cultivate habits. It's harder to develop habits in middle school and even harder in high school, but they can learn it when they sign on to learn it, when they want to learn it. You don't have this tension, this relational dynamic that can develop. Okay, we're going to start with a little bit of an exercise that I hope you'll find valuable. So what I want you to do is I want you to just focus on this task. Focus on answering the questions at the end. Okay, so taking all this information, you're going to be quizzed on it at the end. All right, so who decided to go shopping? You can write down your answers if you'd like. John and Mary. All right, how many of you got that one right? 1, awesome. 2, all right, next question. All right, how many got blue? Good number of you. Excellent, good job. Next. Anybody? 47. Nice. Well done. All right, next one. Anyone? This one might have stumped you. 50 yards. Okay, anybody get that one right? Nope. Okay. Next one, please come on in. Some handouts here for you. So I hear 4. And survey says 4. All right, how many of you got that one correct? Okay, a handful, good. Who received the change from the cashier? All right, who got John? Who got that correct? All right. So good. So this quiz goes on a little bit, and I'm not gonna bore you with all of that stuff other than to say that it definitely continues to show us that sometimes our executive functioning is challenged in different ways. But what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're talking about, and then we're going to go into more practical tips. Okay? Some of you may already know a lot of this stuff, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time maybe on exactly the definition of ADHD and all that good stuff, but to say, what is it? What we know, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. It affects children and adults. Some of you might be like, yeah, that kind of was hard for me. That's kind of my experience when I try to read something or I try to learn something. Okay? So it happens in children and adults. It's persistent. It's an ongoing pattern. And basically what it does is it challenges people with their ability to maintain attention. Their executive functions are oftentimes challenged, and their working memory is also challenged. So you might say, okay, executive function. What exactly is executive function? I hear that talked about all the time. Executive function really is the brain's ability to begin an activity, organize itself, and manage tasks. So when you get to higher levels of education, that actually is required more and more and more. You've got to be able to take it in, organize it, and then have some sort of execution. And that's difficult as the tasks become much more multi-stepped. Okay? So working memory, it's kind of like the RAM on a computer. This is the brain's ability to take in information, right, and then hold on to it for just a few seconds just to organize it and then be able to act on it. Okay? So working memory is a key part. And ADHD usually involves either the inattentive type, the hyperactive impulsive type, or the combined type, which some people call the ring of fire. Okay? That sounds pretty ominous, doesn't it? But basically, it's challenging because you have hyperactivity, you have impulsivity, and inattention. Okay? So that is basically what ADHD is. And these are the symptoms of inattention. So you'll see there failure to give attention to details, difficulty following through on instructions, difficulty sustaining attention, often does not seem like they're listening when you're speaking to them directly, having difficulty organizing. There's all kinds of problems with losing things, just being distracted by all kinds of sounds and sensations in their environment. They're just forgetful. So these are all like inattentive symptoms, and many of you are probably thinking, that's me. Like, I have a lot of those. In fact, I've always had a lot of those. So what we know about ADHD is it is highly genetic. Okay? So when I work with a teen with ADHD, I look at one or both parents, and I'm like, I wonder if they also have some limitations in these areas. So this is definitely a common experience that parents and their kids struggle with similar things. The hyperactivity, this is the stuff that's obvious. These are the kids who, you see these kids in second grade, you just know that there's something wrong, right? ADHD is very obvious in these kinds of behaviors. So, basically being fidgety, running around when you're expected to be, kind of sitting still. Basically, they look like they're on the go all the time, like driven like there's a motor that won't turn off. They have a hard time playing quietly. They often talk excessively. So they leave their seat quite often. So this is the disruptive stuff that teachers will call out pretty early and say, we need to talk about this kid. The inattentive stuff, not so much, because they're quiet and they're kind of like, oh, she's sweet, she stares out the window. But they're not actually calling that student out for their behavior, okay? So, the impulsivity stuff, blurting things out, interrupting other people, just has a hard time taking their turn. They kind of cut in front of others. They're kind of sometimes have reckless behavior. These kids are in the emergency room a lot. They have a lot of accidents. Basically, they're just not thinking about long-term consequences. It's all about in the moment, okay? What feels good in the moment. So a basic ADHD overview, you might say, well, how many people have this? And, there's some debate about this, but in general, the literature talks about approximately 8% of the population has ADHD, which, again, we can have some of those symptoms, but to have ADHD, you have to have a lot of those symptoms. And they can be different ones. So no person with ADHD looks the same because they might have 5 of these certain 9 symptoms, which is different from the 5 symptoms or 6 that somebody else has. So ADHD looks different with every kid, but it still, could be ADHD. So you have, again, these different types of ADHD. You have impaired executive functions. Let me break down a little bit about what executive functions are more. Working memory, processing speed, the ability to initiate, the ability to transition, from one task to another is really hard. Emotional dysregulation is also a part of executive functions. So kids with executive functioning issues, they just get really emotional. They get flooded with emotion. So that's also a part of it. The ability to sustain attention is another part of it. So these are all under the umbrella of executive functions. So we also see what we call, comorbid conditions, or basically with ADHD, we also see things like oppositional defiant issues, conduct disordered stuff, anxiety, depression, tics, which are involuntary movements, substance abuse, sleep disorders, and learning disability. So sometimes when you have a kid, you're like, oh, the problem is ADHD, and then they address the ADHD and they realize, oh, wait, that's not it. At least that's not the only thing they're dealing with. These issues oftentimes come with other complicating variables. So imagine a kid who tried to study and focus kind of like you did on that exercise, and they're not doing well, and they're failing all of their quizzes, and the kid that sits next to them is not. And they're like, oh, this is so easy. Do you remember that kid in school? So easy. And so then that kid with ADHD or learning challenges gets anxious. So then you have an anxiety problem, and then that kid gets yelled at. Why did you lose your book bag again? Where's your assignment notebook? This is the 3rd phone we bought you. Okay, you see the pattern? And so then you have a lot of negativity, right, directed toward that kid. You got a problem, right? You have anxiety, some depression. You have some things that now are stemming from the original neurodevelopmental issue. So parents, with kids with these issues, they're concerned about their kids' academic failures, the delays. They're not keeping up with their peers. Of course, when they become driving age, these are kids who are impulsive, right, and inattentive, and you give them a driver's license and you let them go 60 miles per hour. Do you have concerns about that, right? Many do. Difficulties with their peers. Sometimes if you're inattentive, you miss social cues, like when someone's bored of you talking constantly, right? And then you're like, oh, I can't stand her. She just talks constantly, but she's not picking up on the cues. It's not really her fault. Like, she doesn't mean to do harm, okay? So that happens quite a bit. They have a lot of social problems. Risky sexual behavior. Developmentally, it's very common for young people to just explore their sexuality in different ways. It's very developmentally appropriate. But when you have someone who needs a lot of stimulation in their brain for the brain to work well, which is the prefrontal cortex here, everything working, they need high excitement activities. So what are high excitement activities? Right? Sexual is one. When I was a teen, and I'm going to be a little open here, I was an older teen. I had a friend, and she was like really, really exciting to do fun things with. So one of the things that she said, Chris, I found a new activity. I said, what is it? She said, well, I like to jump on moving trains and ride them to another town. And then I have someone else pick me up. wherever I show. I said, that sounds really cool. So what did I do? I tried it, and I almost lost my foot because as I jumped onto the train, my foot rolled, and if I didn't catch myself and pull myself up, I would have lost a leg or my life. So again, this prefrontal cortex, that plans ahead, right? You anticipate consequences. If you are wanting a dopamine hit, which that's what it is for these kids, dopamine hit, you do high excitement kinds of activities, and sometimes they don't think about the consequences, okay? Substance abuse, I think we all know that could be exciting, right, for some people. So here's the thing, there are gifts to ADHD, and I want to be very clear on this. We can talk about this in terms of problem. Here's the thing. Many entrepreneurs, business leaders, innovative people, creative people are people with ADHD, okay? So here are some of the things that you'll also see with your gift, which I'm going to call your children gifts, okay, that have these kinds of challenges. One, they're intelligent. These are intelligent kids. They're creative, humorous, passionate, innovative, high energy, productive, spontaneous, willing to take risks, romantic, engaging, compassionate, hyper-focused. All that stuff is a part of the mix too. So I want you to have a balanced picture of what this is. And so here's a little cartoon here. Look, it's almost 11 o'clock. Wow. The last 2 hours really flew by. I hope the teacher didn't say anything important. Okay? That's hyper-focus, right? They can be so focused that they can totally lose track of time. Let's talk about the case of John, who in 1949 attended Eton College and dreamed of becoming a scientist. Last in his class, he received this on his report card. So this is a true story. His work has been far from satisfactory. He will not listen, but will insist on doing his work in his own way. I believe he has ideas about becoming a scientist. On his present showing, this is quite ridiculous. If he can't learn simple biological facts, he would have no chance of doing the work of a specialist, and it would be a sheer waste of time on his part and of those who have to teach him. Imagine receiving that feedback. So let's talk about John. This was Sir John B. Gurdon, winner of the 2012 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for his revolutionary research on stem cells. Now imagine how fun that would be to tell your teacher that you've made something of yourself, okay? And I love these stories. I have stories that I can tell you time and time again about kids who struggled in school. They were picked on, they were isolated, they had no friends, they were terrible students, and they go on to make an impact in this world. Significant impacts. My dad is one of them. My dad has ADHD, and I've witnessed it from my perspective my whole life. My dad ended up becoming a sportscaster for ESPN. He was on the radio, TV. His personality is larger than life, much larger than mine, and he really has made quite an impact in this world, even though he was a terrible student. And his dad died when he was 4. So there you go. So there's definitely stories that come out of adversity, good stories. So let's talk about some celebrities. You may recognize these people. Does anybody like Mickey Mouse? The Chicago Bulls? All right. So you may recognize some of these are obviously athletes. Some are comedians. You've got, Richard Branson has done a few things with his life. Michael Phelps, he has a few things that look like gold, right? So get all this stuff. So what I want you to do is I want you to grab a few people around you and just form, maybe groups of 4, something like that, 4 or 5. And I want you to talk about what do you appreciate about your child, with ADHD. This is really important. I can give you a bunch of tips and tools and give you a lot of head knowledge. Here's the thing. Here's what's key. Relationship. Let me say this again. Relationship. Your relationship with your kids is the single biggest change agent. Okay? The way in which that you cultivate relationship with your kids, elementary, middle, high school, is to respect them, to appreciate them, right? To be curious about them. Okay, so I want you to just take a few moments and just say, what vision do you have about your child who can use his or her personality and abilities to make an impact on society. I want you to envision this. Don't envision what's happening right now. Envision beyond that, right? Beyond that. So we're going to take probably, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 8 to 10 minutes. So please, I know some of you are introverted. I apologize. I know this is difficult for you. Just do your best to at least listen, but try to participate. Okay, we're going to transition now into the next section of the talk, and I hope that you were able to listen to one another to know that you're not alone. Okay? That's the biggest reason why I do what I just did. You are not alone. Please know that. Sometimes when you're listening to the struggles of your kids, you think we are the only family that's dealing with this. And that is not the case at all. So please know that. The other thing that I noticed is that you guys really participate. You were active. You're able to introduce yourselves, and you just launched into some things and some deeper things, and so well done. You did great. So I'm going to start talking about values. The way that I work with people is I work with people according to their values. So whatever their values are, is I help clarify those values, and I hope that their behavior, their actions are in accordance with their values. And that's when things really come together for people. So let me talk about this quote from Maria Popova. And this quote is really, really cool, and it really captures a lot of what I see happening around me, and you probably do too. The quote is, "Presence is far more intricate and rewarding in art than productivity. Ours is a culture that measures our worth as human beings by our efficiency, our earnings, our ability to perform this or that. The cult of productivity has its place, but worshiping at its altar daily robs us of the very capacity for joy and wonder that makes life worth living." For as Annie Dillard memorably put it, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. How many of you see this trend all around us in Western culture, right? Productivity. It's about efficiency. If you're not doing well, the insurance companies will pay me money to get you back to work, basically. That's why they're always providing, they want their employees to be productive. They want people to be active members of society, to be productive members of society. So productivity is such a huge emphasis in our culture, but here's the thing. What about presence? Being with, right? Being with, sitting with our kids, listening to our kids. Presence. We're so busy accomplishing to impress people that we don't even know and we don't even like. Okay? So presence is huge. I set the stage for what I'm about to say by saying that let's not be in this just a cog in the wheel here. Let's really think about what we're doing. So relationship. I'm going back to relationship. So relationship, the foundation of success. Establish predictable patterns of connections or rituals. This gets into some of the practical stuff. I would love for all of us in our family lives to have predictable patterns of when we're going to see our kids, when we're going to see our spouses, when we're going to see our best friends. Like truly predictable patterns, not just whenever we have time, because that will never happen. But for example, if you have pizza night every Friday night, it's pizza night. Okay, great. It's a predictable pattern of connection. Maybe it's coffee with your spouse or your loved one. It's predictable. You know it's going to happen. You can shore up ideas and thoughts and then share them in that context. Not a quick conversation while one's brushing their teeth, right? Or one's in the shower. That's not good conversation, right? That's not connection. So, laugh often. Laughter should be a part of our everyday lives. Have a climate at home of lightness, of laughter, of playfulness. Being playful and fun. Be a kid, My kids always talk to me about kid spirit. Dad, I see your kid spirit. Your kid spirit's coming out. That's when I'm being more playful. It's kind of fun for all of us. Seek to understand rather than to be understood. As parents, we have a lot of wisdom, don't we? We've lived life, we've made mistakes, and we've learned from those mistakes. We love imparting information to our kids. Just say, you know what? If I just download this information to that little head, they're not going to make the mistakes that I made or that I see other people making. But that's really not what it's about. It's about seeking to understand them. They will come close to you and they will attach to you securely and for the long run, not just during their childhood, for the long run, because they feel cared for, right? They feel cared for. So important. Say I'm sorry. I don't know if you do this. Say I'm sorry to your kids. We make mistakes as adults, and if we model humility, that goes a long way. Perfectionism is a cancer, and they may be exceptional kids, and they could be better than most people in certain things. But let's teach our kids humility. Let's model humility, because that really goes a long way. Pray together. I don't know what your faith background traditions are. Myself, I have a faith tradition that's very strong, and it guides my family and how we live our lives. Praying together is one of the most bonding things you can do, if you're inclined to do that. But that's really, really important. Express curiosity in their activities. You might be able to say, well, I'm just not into anime. Can't do it. I don't understand it. It looks weird. Get to be a student of anime. Really understand the gaming environment. What games are you playing? Why do you enjoy this? Let the kids be the expert, because they are. They really are. So let them do the things that they're inclined to do, but be available so that they can teach you and you can appreciate what they're doing. It's so important. You can listen to someone like me or read a book and, get all these how-tos, but really, only you know your kid. You know the individual kid that you have, and that's really important. You need to assess the situation. What types of things does your child struggle with? Figure that out. Really understand the specifics of that. Pick out strategies that you may think may work for your family in your situation. Everybody's family life is different. The rhythms are different. So you got to figure out what works. So you might say, okay, we need a regular homework time, and it's going to be structured, and this is what we're going to do as a family every single day, the same time every day. Some of you have other commitments, and you're not there at the same time every day. But you got to figure out what works for you, but we do know that setting aside time, uninterrupted time to do academic work, schoolwork, is absolutely essential for your kids to get into good habits of accomplishing their schoolwork. Limiting screen time. Some people, it's really, really easy to just allow our kids to be on more and more screens because that's when things are quiet for us, and we're just kind of just coping. I don't know if you feel this way. So many parents are exhausted, absolutely exhausted. They have nothing left, complete depletion. And that is not uncommon, but it is one of those things to think, okay, what's the effect of my kid being in front of a screen for 3 hours when it's a school day, right? Or on the weekend for 8 hours, okay? So some of these things are just clearly, they get out of control, and if you don't establish good habits early, it's harder to correct when they're older, because then they feel like you are punishing them, because now you're limiting what was once free to do. Sitting down with your child and talking to them about it. What are they willing to try? So especially with teens, this is important. You want to get their buy-in. The way that you get the buy-in is you say, here are some strategies on which one sounds like it could be helpful or that you're willing to try. They may try one of the three and say, I like this one, I can't do these. Okay, you did the one. That's great. Let's celebrate that. And for younger kids, elementary age kids, middle school kids, you kind of structure them and you kind of manage it more. You're more active. You basically say, this is what you're going to do. You manage younger kids, you mentor older kids. There is a difference. Parents who are helicopter parents, whatever you want to call them, they are having a hard time moving from the managing to the mentoring. And some of these, my wife's a college professor, she will have parents that call her. College. Yeah. So I want you to just be aware that you're letting go of the control gradually. But you should not have a senior at home who you're sitting down and you're doing their homework and you're giving them all kinds of limits and they should be figuring that out by the time they're seniors in high school. That should be like the pre-freshman year of college at that point. All right, let's talk about some practical things. I'm a little bit of a sleep Nazi. So what does that mean? I think sleep is the cornerstone of good health. I think that we have a sleep epidemic in this country. We are not sleeping. Why are we not sleeping? Because we're too busy. Why are we too busy? We have too many commitments. Why do we have too many commitments? Because we're trying to be important. So we don't realize we have limits until we get sick, right? Then we know we have limits. we know we have limits when our marriages are on the rocks and we are getting divorces. That's how we know we have limits, right? I want to just say this. Teach your kids limits early. This is a basic one. Sleep. Primary. And like, this is foundational. If this is wrong, if this is off, if they're not getting enough sleep or quality sleep, they're going to be anxious. They're going to be depressive. They're going to be antsy. Their physical growth and maturity is going to be interrupted. Sleep does so much to restore. So, for teens, 8 to 10 hours is actually where they should be. You guys might be like, what? 8 to 10 hours. So the younger kids can actually be, a little bit higher than that even. But that's something I want to just encourage you to recognize sleep hygiene and making sure they're developing good habits of getting prepared to sleep, certain routines and rituals. I won't get into all that. It's a whole nother talk, how to do that well. We do that at my practice. It is helpful to figure that out. But it is important. Sleep, really important. What does that mean? No electronic devices for 2 hours before bed. 2 hours. Electronic devices are stimulating for many reasons. One of them is blue light, which stimulates the brain. So if they have their phone going off because their friends are texting them because their friend is saying, oh, she said this about me, I can't believe, can you talk? No, no, it's sleep time. There's no talking. So, okay, so that's sleep. Nutrition. People with executive function issues, ADHD, really high protein diets is what a lot of what they talk about, because if you have a lot of carbs, it's a blood sugar issue. And you kind of like, it may feel good to eat a bunch of bagels and stuff and cereal, and then you feel really good, and then all of a sudden, you crash. So it's important that high protein, it'll talk about that in a lot of the research, omega-3s, B vitamins, folic acid. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just relaying information that's out there about natural ways of supporting kids with ADHD. That's what you'll hear, a lot of this stuff. Exercise, critical. We're meant to move. The kids need to develop habits of moving. Exercise, walking for 30 minutes, 4 days a week, will have significant, profound impact in their mood, in their the way they're regulating their emotions. And it's a great habit to get into. Have some fun that's non-tech related, like physical stuff that we used to do when we were kids. Okay, just fill in the blank, whatever that is for you. But a lot of it, sports, puzzles, painting, dance, going to youth group, being relational, being social, really important. Things like drama, swimming, music. Their brains are developing and they need to be stimulated. And if all they have stimulating them is what's in a screen, that has significant cognitive limitation. They cannot grow and develop the way they need to. So really important. Let's talk about what you can do practically. Working memory is a common limitation for people with executive function, ADHD. There's something called CogMed, working memory training. Have you ever heard of CogMed? CogMed is empirically supported intervention to expand people's working memory. 20 years ago, we didn't know that was possible. 25 years ago, it was like, wow, can the brain really change? Can you actually improve someone's brain? And what we found out is you can. You can increase the RAM in their computers. Yes.
What's the time frame? How often somebody needs to do that to get benefits? Do you have an idea like how often?
So there's a protocol, and the protocol essentially is 5 weeks, doing about 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So it's a big commitment, but you can do it over the summer. It's a great time to do it, and it is computer-based. You can do it at home. And so we have a protocol, and we do a pre-measure and a post-measure, and we can see the gains, that are made. But it's a real good, effective, non-medication form of treatment, help for people with working memory issues. I had all 3 of my kids do this because why not? Why not have some enhancement, right? So, yeah, so CogMed, and there's something called neurofeedback. Neurofeedback is a form of help that has some benefits. Some people will say, yeah, it helped for a while, but then, we didn't keep our gains. So that I've heard that too. But both CogMed and neurofeedback are about 75 to 80% effective for people, yes.
So if you do the 5 weeks, is that a lasting effect? I mean, have you created something that then will be...
Yeah, is it lasting? Yeah, so the research has shown, yes, that as you exercise your working memory and as you kind of learn to use it more and more and more, the gains actually sometimes even improve even beyond, well beyond the training, which is pretty cool. So we have seen a longer term. Now this is still newer, it's like 10 years old, so we don't have a lot of longitudinal studies to see, 20 years down the road or whatnot, but it looks very, very promising. So if you use it, you won't lose it, is the idea. Yeah. So don't let the great be the enemy of the good. So things don't have to be perfect, but if you're moving in the direction of help and supports, it goes a long way. I'm a big user of contracts as I work with my families and the teens and the school-age kids. And basically what it does is it lists out what the expectations are very clearly. Did you know that sometimes kids, teens can be lawyers and they have selective hearing? And sometimes, you didn't say that. Well, you didn't hear that, but I said that. So this kind of stuff lists out all the expectations, making sure that you review it with them, they sign it, you put it in a place where they can review it and see it regularly. This one here is a homework contract, it's kind of like an agreement. It's a business thing. There are consequences too, but minimizing distractions, managing your time. This is when homework will be done. It's listed there. Participation in certain things. How do you stay organized? So there's all kinds of things that you can do on this parent contract. There's a parent section too that basically you're agreeing to. So you're not completely off the hook. So parents do their part as well to provide the scaffolding necessary for your kids to reach their potential. So parent part, there's the kid part. We also have one for screens, screen kind of contracts, really important. Yes?
I'm having a hard time reading that. Could you just read off a few examples?
Yeah, it's hard, it's so small. Yeah. If you were to, so some examples of this would be minimizing distractions, turn off your phone, TV, and other distractions. Basically I'm agreeing to do my homework daily. Follow up with teacher about missing assignments, use homework time for studying. So if you were to Google homework contract, this stuff shows up. So you can kind of review some of that stuff. So contracts are very helpful, especially with teens. Using assistive technology, so those who are Apple users, iOS, there's something called Safari Reader. They have a feature that can remove ads and visual clutter from the web browser. Do you know in that exercise that we did early on, all that stuff was coming at? And that's what the internet is, right? A lot of ads and things and popping and blinking and stuff. So you can actually reduce the clutter there. Guided access allows parents and teachers to disable the home button so kids get locked into a certain app so they're not like switching between apps. And then built-in calendar apps are really good for organization and for reminders. So I know a lot of kids these days in classroom settings, they're given tablets and Surface Pros and all these kinds of things, and they really do need to be limited as to what they have access to and making sure they're doing academic work. Android, they have their own ways of doing this. Accessibility feature called Interaction could help you disable certain app features to limit temptation to use them. So here's an example of a schedule. This is mostly kind of for like a teen, like an older kid, but after school, rest. Green time is restorative. That's time in nature. Really, really important. Time in nature. Green time more than screen time. Really important. Place the phone and the charger in the basket. Turn off your phones. Put them away. It's a phone-free time. Homework and responsibilities, 3:30 p.m. to 6. Maybe that's the block of time that's going to be done for that. There's a set dinner time. Ideally, this is hard to do, but it's really good for your kids to have a set dinner time where everybody's around the table practicing their social skills. Yes, practicing their social skills with real people around the table who love them, ideally. Finish homework if needed at a certain time. Then, again, whenever the bedtime is, you back up and you say no screens, 2 hours before bedtime. So that's why I have 8 p.m., no screens. Hopefully all the homework is done, bedtime at 10 p.m. Yes?
Television as well?
Yes. Yeah. Televisions, any kind of screen, because it's stimulating. Not only the content, but sometimes the blue light, the visual stuff. AM schedule, wake up, say 6 o'clock. Maybe they take meds, maybe they don't. They eat their breakfast. Hopefully it's high protein. They have free time until school starts. So at that point, everything should be ready, set. all their materials are gathered together, they can just kind of relax a little bit. And then hopefully everything is all ready to go. Ideally, to get the backpack, phone, everything, I like put things at what I call a launch pad. You come into the house, you put things in one location, you know where they are. When you leave the house, you take things from the launch pad. So whether that be book bag, all of your folders, all that kind of stuff in one location. It should not be scattered around the house, because then you have chaos before school, high stress, tension, not necessary. It could be done the night before. Reasons for procrastination: executive function, and a sense of time is oftentimes thrown off. They have a soft internal clock rather than a loud one, so they miss things in terms of time frame. Large or challenging tasks can be overwhelming. They get flooded. They can't prioritize. Fun activities are more rewarding, obviously, dopamine hit. Solution, setting aside study homework time daily regardless of the amount. Maybe they say, I have no homework. Well, it doesn't matter. You can still review stuff. Reduce the struggle by reducing homework time. A rule of thumb, 10 minutes for each grade. So if there's a 10th grader, it'd be 1 hour and 40 minutes. Dedicated homework space in public places without distractions. I don't like computers being in bedrooms. I like kids to work on their stuff where everybody can see what they're looking at on their screen. So dining room tables, that kind of stuff. Of course, all electronic devices turned off. Have everything ready. Using all kinds of different clocks. Analog clocks are good, the old-fashioned kind. Use timers for chunking, so you may set a timer every so often to study and then take a 5 or 10 minute break. Set limits. Basically, screen time and socializing really only after the study and homework is completed. So habits are really key in this stuff. Habits. Regular routine rhythms of doing things. Yes?
So, what do you think about the whole music kind of while you're doing?
Listening to music. That's good. Let me hold that question. I'm going to get to Q&A right here in a minute. I'm going to get through just a couple more slides here. One of the things I'm going to ask you to maybe even jot down for yourselves is what strategies have proven most effective with your child in terms of organization, distraction, forgetfulness, academic, social confidence, that kind of stuff. You can certainly jot those down. Usually I do a group discussion around this, but today, because of time, I just wanted to Q&A. So we'll just talk about that next. So let's do that now. So when it comes to music, I get this question a lot. It's a good question. Some kids do really well with study music. So they have some stimulation that is just enough arousal to get them to focus.
So there's something to that.
Yes.
I'm so the opposite.
Yep.
That it's really hard for me to
Yes.
decide whether for other people that actually proves.
We're all different.
Okay.
We're all different. So there's all kinds of studying music that you might find on YouTube and different things that you can preview, but it's really music without words. It's pretty important. They have different tempos and different things. They have electronic stuff and jazz related. You just have to figure out what works for you. So trying things out with your child is really important. But I like the sound canceling headphones for people who get really distracted easily, and that makes things really quiet. Like they can't hear anything. It's just really, really quiet. Some kids do really well with that. So yeah, other questions?
Okay, so I've put together a homework box that has everything in it that he would need to get his homework done.
Mm-hmm.
I've had him sit at the kitchen table to do his homework. And, I agree with the electronics. Here is my question.
Mm-hmm.
If he has to do his homework on his computer,
Mm-hmm.
because at the school he goes to, they give them computers and they walk around with them all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Then he comes home to do his homework, and I'm in the kitchen making dinner. He's doing his homework, but he's really not doing his homework. He's
Yeah.
playing a game on the computer.
Yeah.
And I've tried, he's in 8th grade,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to back off and not be a drone,
Right.
but now I'm noticing he's not finishing assignments. They're not getting handed in.
Yeah.
I'm checking his assignment notebook, but
Right.
how do you?
That's
how do you
it's
focus
it's
on
really good.
You're
So
doing everything, but you're not.
a part of it is it's being relational, sitting down and saying, hey, this is what I notice. I'm noticing that you're on the computer playing games, and I'm also noticing you're not getting your homework finished. So help me understand that. What's happening? So you let them come up with what's going on. And then whatever they say, that's what you respond to. I wonder if we can try this. Okay? I wonder if. So here's the phrases that are non-confrontational. I noticed, not you always, bad news. If there's a harsh startup to a conversation, statistics say it's not going to end well. And the you always is not good. Doesn't work with your spouse either, does it? No, no. So I notice, and then I wonder. In other words, it's kind of a gentle suggestion of let's think about it. And if they come up with a solution, you praise them for it, right? That is a fantastic idea. Well, I like the way you're thinking. Let me know how I can support you, and then you have a little bit of additional support if they're open to it. But if it's their idea, they're not going to resist you. It's not going to be a struggle. You got to take the struggle out of it. Yeah, does that help? Let me add another part to this answer. The other part is natural and logical consequences. Okay, what that basically means is if screens are getting in the way of them doing their homework or finishing their homework, you basically give them a consequence that relates to the crime or the problem or the issue. Okay, so and if it makes sense, they're going to be like, okay, I get it. So basically, you just lay it out for them. You know what? If you do your homework and you get this all done, you can do whatever you want, kind of thing, right? If you manage your responsibilities, we're out of your business. It's kind of like you can drive a car, and if you drive appropriately and within the speed limit, police are not going to pull you over. You go 70 miles per hour in a 35, it's going to raise some eyebrows, and you're going to get some attention. So as parents, really, if your kids are managing stuff, that's great. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're figuring it out. But as soon as they have problems, zoop, you're zeroing in on the problem, and that's when you can address it and be a little bit more active in what's going on. Does that help? Okay. Yes?
It may sound kind of silly, but any suggestions on teenagers that take showers that are exceedingly long?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say the water bill, other kids trying to get in there.
You're looking at the clock, it's like, you got to go to school. It's like,
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Developmentally, teens, their bodies are changing, right? So they have more hormones so there's this awareness of themselves too. So there's the body odor stuff. There's the, just becoming familiar with their body in different ways. So some of it is just very developmentally. Some of them use showers to relax, relaxation. So they're so stressed. Do you know how prevalent anxiety is now? It's such a huge problem. So warm showers, it's part of that too, right? Relaxation. And, even if you think about it, do you enjoy being in the shower, right? I mean, some people really do. Like some people can spend most of their day in the shower and be perfectly happy, right? So a part of this is understanding, what's the function of that, for him, and who knows what the function is. There could be a lot of functions, okay? And some of the conversations may not be very comfortable to have, but you really do have to kind of just, say, hey, I'm noticing that the shower's so long. Maybe you might consider keeping it to 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever. So, yeah.
How about one who's so slow on doing homework and just takes all night and gets to bed late, but if you try to take the homework away, makes a big hullabaloo enough to wake up people who are sleeping.
Yeah. So how old are we talking about?
13 now.
13, okay. So one question I always have is all this person's doing, is it just homework? Or are there 3 or 4 screens up at the same time?
He does have a Nintendo DS, but he doesn't usually have that out.
Okay. Because I work with a lot of teens, and what they tell me is they're not doing homework that whole time. They're toggling between activities. And so when they say, oh, it takes me so long to do my homework, I'm like, well, let's break this down. Like, what are you doing?
He's always been really slow, even when he was little.
So he's just slow, in terms of doing his homework.
Gets very distracted. Like I told the doctor, he could get distracted by a fuzzy.
Okay, yeah. So if distraction is the issue, I would shorten the homework. I would work the teachers and say, look, this kid has, executive function or ADHD related issues. Doing the homework makes sense. We just want to limit how much homework because it's bogging him down. He's not doing anything else, right? He's so stressed out or he's preoccupied with this. This is taking up our entire family life by him. It's a struggle every single day. This is where you become an advocate. You have, through our laws, our kids deserve free and appropriate education. So it means that they can have 504 plans, IEPs, and you can get advocates to make things happen. And if you do that, it's amazing how quickly they'll like, okay, yeah, we can shorten the homework. Instead of doing all the math items,
Public school, though.
it's not, but you can still advocate because they are sensitive to those issues. They have to be, right? So, how about any other questions? Yes.
So I have a 10-year-old son who is going 100 miles an hour all the time. And socially, he's now just starting to get friends, and friends will come over to eat, lunch together. Brewster will eat his lunch in 15 seconds. And he's like, out the door. I'm like, and my friend's still eating. And I try to talk to him about this, like, later, like, I don't want to embarrass him. But every single time, he's, like, running out, and I'm like, I don't know how to, like, socially, he just is not getting it.
Yeah,
So I don't know how to be like, you have to wait till your friend is done.
Right.
You can't leave him sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
This happens all the time.
Right,
Socially, he's just not understanding that.
right.
So I don't know how to help him.
Yeah, well, the one thing that, again, sitting down with him and just asking him what he's so excited to do. Like, what is it? Does he have awareness? Like, are you feeling antsy? Are you feeling excited about something? Are you feeling kind of sick? Like, why are you leaving the food so quickly? Like, what's going on? Because they can give you all kinds of answers as to why that is. So finding out what that is, and then basically getting them to improve a little bit each time. So let's say that they only spend 2 minutes. He only spends 2 minutes sitting there and eating. Just say, you know what? If you sit here for 3 minutes, then you might give some sort of a reward, or 4 minutes, or then 5 minutes. But just to say from 2 minutes to 10 minutes, it's just too much. So then you might say, well, when you take off and leave, what's your friend doing? What do you think your friend is doing? What might your friend be feeling, right? So just being aware of other people's needs and where they're coming from, because they may not be able to necessarily anticipate what those thoughts and feelings are. And of course, in a non-shaming way. So you're just like, what do you notice? What do you imagine? Letting them think it through a little bit, slowing them down. But that's common. It's hard to get kids, especially active kids, to sit down for meals, just in general. And so that's why I say shorten the meals. Just shorten them. And then developmentally, they'll develop over time to be able to do more of that, but it just may be too much for them at that time. So, yeah. All right, just look at our time. We're almost there. Any other questions? Yes?
How would you suggest to handle a kid who has a lot of tics and nervous behaviors? Because we're unsure at home, like how much of that we bring to his attention because we know all of his peers are bringing that to his attention. So it's like, do you make him feel bad about it that we're noticing it too? Like we try to be helpful on how to correct it, but then I feel like he's feeling more and more weird because of these behaviors. So,
Right.
For example, I mean, the tics, as you know, they change all the time. Humming has become one of his coping mechanisms right now. So he walks around the house humming, which is hard for everybody else to do what they're doing. He's in the classroom humming, but then you see that like look on his face when you're like bringing it to his attention, like he's disappointing you again, or maybe a peer of his has noticed that he's humming again. So we don't know at home how to make him aware of these situations and not make him feel bad.
Yeah, it's interesting because with involuntary behaviors, if he doesn't have any control over it at all, then obviously you pointing it out is not going to help, right? So a lot of times tics are made worse because of anxiety, right? So then what you want to do is, I like this whole idea of creating a home environment that involves quiet times, and I like the quiet times in the practice and the model something called mindfulness. You guys ever hear of mindfulness? Mindfulness is really powerful. It's powerful for kids with executive functioning, ADHD, kids who are anxious, kids who are depressed, kids that have all kinds of different physical and emotional issues. Basically what it is being able to identify thoughts and feelings in a non-judgmental way and being able to stay in the present moment. Not your mind going to the future or your mind going into the past. And so maybe practicing some mindfulness meditation in the home and then inviting him in, say, hey, give this a try. There's one called Headspace. Some of you might have heard of Headspace. It's an app. There's a free program trial. You can try it out. It's kind of fun. They have those little videos that show what it is. So kids like that. It's kind of fun. There's one I like a lot. I use almost every day called Calm, C-A-L-M, Calm. They have all kinds of mindfulness-based programs for sleep. They have sleep stories. They're really, really good, actually. They have for anxiety and for college age kids and young kids, and like they have all kinds of specialized programs. They're only like 3 minutes long to like 10 or 20 or 30 minutes long. You can get longer. Mindfulness is associated with many, many protective factors for us, emotionally, and even dealing with physical problems, physical pain. So if you did a mindfulness practice, he may come to the place where he's aware more of what's happening, what he's doing. And he's aware of other people and how they're responding to him. So to point it out, you want him to basically be empowered to recognize it in himself. So then he can navigate that space, but creating hopefully as calm and relaxing of a home environment as possible. And just being a support to him. He's got a lot of criticism outside the home. The home does not need to be the same, with the criticisms, right?
It's hard to juggle that, though. It's like, okay, we have 3 kids watching a movie.
Right.
And one just comes in and starts humming and kicking. And
Yeah.
it's like, do you bring that to his attention, and all of a sudden he's
Yeah.
upset with the family movie night? Do
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
So you can have a cue word that basically says, body awareness, something where he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then he catches it. So it's a cue word. It's not a long conversation, but it just might be a cue word, whatever you choose. And so then he just knows, I got to check myself.
Okay.
Am I humming? What am I doing? So, yeah, anything else? Last minute. I'm going to, Heritage Professional Associates, which is my practice, has a table. If you want to talk to Renee Voss, is one of our clinical training directors, and she's a marriage and family therapist, and she's also a CADC, so she does drug and alcohol related counseling as well. She's a resource. I have another colleague here, Travis Satterley. So we can answer your questions if you have any questions about heritage. We are a support to you. That's what we love to do. So feel free to approach us with that. So thank you very much for your help. I really appreciate it. You guys have been great.